Hi, I'm Matt Barry from ESPN. You're getting ready to watch one of the best college football podcasts ever. It's the Harris Highlight Show.
Na 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 na.
Coming to you live from the Bill Austin Radio Studio at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism in beautiful downtown Phoenix. This is episode 12 of season 4 of the Harris Highlight Show. Joining me this week is our college football expert, Lyle Goldstein. I wanted to try to get to him before he was doing his mic over there. I wanted to get him struggling to adjust it with our college football expert slash analyst slash guru slash commentator.
He's just trying to make up for making me go second this week.
With our executive producer, Brady Klein.
You never said my name.
With Josh Schaefer.
Thank you.
And our executive producer, Brady Klein. I'm your host for this evening, Blake Harris. Now, guys, we're going to start things off right away with the Q&A. And this question comes from Aaron, and he wants to know, what's the money line on Lyle showing up this week? And Lyle is actually here in studio, dying to talk some Minnesota football, Aaron, so don't you worry. That's coming up right away. But, guys, it was a nice weekend. It seemed like it's been a while since we've been here in studio. It's been a long week. How has our week been? How was our weekend?
Well, Brady and I called the USC-Arizona State game, which means we had a lot of fun. It was a good game, but somebody had to win. And
almost resulted in a tie.
That means that somebody had to lose. Unfortunately, there are no ties in college football, but there was a tie in the building. And you know what? I thought that it was one of the better football broadcasts I've ever had. So
you're welcome.
Yes. So thanks, Brady.
I got to sit there, eat some food, and listen. So, yeah, fun.
Yeah, Blake, by the way, it's been exactly 168 hours since we've been in the studio. So,
do the math in your head?
Yep.
Nice.
Long time.
Nice.
Long
Great
time,
math.
Blake.
And it has been a while. It has been a while. But before we get into the college football playoff rankings, we're going to go over our fantasy from this past week.
Let's do it.
I played Josh this week, and
yes, you did.
Josh provided me the L. He brought the hurts.
I did.
He brought the hurts, defeating me 223 to 188. And man, that quarterback combo of Jalen Hurts and Joe Burrow.
Combos.
With Travis Etienne. I mean, that's essentially 100 points right there from those three.
It pays to have the number 1 quarterback Jalen Hurts, the number 2 quarterback Joe Burrow, and the number 3 quarterback Anthony Gordon all on my team.
So a great win for you.
Actually, technically, it does not pay. It does not pay anything because of the NCAA.
Ah, yes. The good old NCAA. Lyle has a nice nickname for the NCAA. The
National Corrupt Athletic Association?
Yes.
Oh, Lyle, I'm reporting you.
So speaking of victories, TaylorMade brought home these scores were eerily similar. Josh beat me 223 to 188, and Brady beat Lyle 219 to 183. So using my math skills right there, Josh beat me by 35. Hence why I said my math skills. And Brady beat Lyle by 36. So some very competitive games this week, guys. Josh is now 9-2. I'm 7-4.
Yes, sir.
Brady is 4-7, and Lyle is 2-9.
You know what you can make money in? Our 10-man league, what I'm in first place for. So
Lyle,
yeah, but that doesn't matter for the show, now does it?
Lyle, you bring it up every week, and nobody cares.
I mean,
also, you should not be in first place. We tied, and I had 3 players that needed 1 yard for an extra point.
Are you sure you don't care?
I care. Nobody else cares. I care.
So we got some people that care about this league. I'm currently in 4th place.
Oh my God!
But I own the tiebreaker, so I'm gonna be. It's gonna be a great game. I actually play Lyle this week in our fantasy league. So if I win, I'm in. If I lose, I'm still possibly in. So Lyle, you've already clinched the you've already clinched the playoffs. I think you should rest your players this week for some load management. What do you say?
Oh, load management. I'm a big fan of load management, except when I'm playing Blake, and I don't want to beat Blake.
Well, according to the projections, you aren't. But hey, that's why they're projections. We'll have to wait and see. So another great fantasy week. Now, I believe I mean, I know for our one league it is. I don't know how it is for this. We're coming up on the end of the season, which means playoffs are coming up, boys. Now, I assume since we only have 4, it's probably going to be 2 more weeks until playoffs, but I'll have to do. Maybe our intern in the other studio can let us know when our playoffs are. So if intern over there can do that, that would be fantastic. He's shaking his head saying he will. So the advantage of having interns in the studio. But guys, it's time now to go over to the college football playoff rankings. Unfortunately, they weren't live this week while we were in studio. It was only a one-time thing last week where they were doing it at halftime between the basketball games.
I really thought they were catering to us for a second.
They really should. I mean,
Yeah,
that'd be
I
ideal
agree.
if we could, react to them live here on air. They happened 2 hours ago. The 3 of us watched together. I think Brady was just finishing up his shift at the bureau, so hopefully he was able to catch it right as they started, because that's when his shift ended, right at 5. So, guys, where shall we begin? I have them loaded up right now, and I guess we'll start off with just, what are your initial reactions from the rankings? You don't have to go over any certain teams right now, just overall, what are your reactions? Did the committee get it right for the second week?
You know what? For the most part, I think they did. Blake, we kind of talked earlier this week before we even came into the studio, and obviously if you follow us on Twitter, you probably saw the 4 of us put out our top 4 rankings, and 3 of us had the same rankings, and then Blake nailed it, putting Georgia at 4. And I'm not opposed to it. Georgia at 4 is fine with me. Alabama out of the top 4 is fine with me. Either way, I'm fine with that. For the most part, I think it's pretty solid. I don't really have too many complaints. I have a few complaints, but I don't have too many.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I think there could have been still a case for Ohio State to be at 1, but when LSU beats a team like Alabama on the road too, I mean, they're going to be the number 1 team. Talent-wise, I still think it could be Ohio State, but you know what? You can just kind of toss that one up, and it doesn't really matter who's 1, who's 2, and it makes sense for this week for it to be LSU. I still think Alabama's one of the best 4 teams, but to drop 2 spots after a loss, it makes sense. And also, things usually play itself out as the weeks go on. So if Alabama really is one of the best 4, they'll find a way to get in anyway. So for the most part, yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, like you said, those 1 and 2 and 3 are pretty much interchangeable up to this point so far in the ranking system. You get Bama, Clemson-ish. So those 1 and 2, I'd say, are really interchangeable right now. So between LSU and Ohio State, they got it right because of the magnitude of the win, but Ohio State couldn't be very far behind in that second spot.
Of course they got it. Oh, there we go. I was
You were
having
drinking some water.
Right around this time, I always have my first drink of water from my ice cool hydro flask. It is delicious water. Of course, I think they got them right because, well, we had the same 4. So maybe Paula just happened to see my tweet and happened to think the exact same things for some upcoming week. But I thought there were no problems with it. I thought overall it was pretty good. Now,
Imagine her going into that meeting and say, this student of mine thinks it should be this.
I would not blame her one bit.
I don't think that's what happened. I don't mean to burst your bubble, but I don't think that happened.
I'll have to talk to her when I see her on Thursday if that's what happened. But I'm leaning towards yes. I'm leaning towards she saw the tweet. All right, guys, let's get things underway. Minnesota comes in at 8. They jump up 9 spots. Now, we were going nuts when we saw Texas came in at 19, going, wow, they were unranked. They moved up to 19. They jumped 6 spots. That was fantastic in the other studio. That's going on that camera right there. So we're thinking, wow, Texas jumps up 6 spots. That's insane. And then here comes Minnesota. They jump up 9 spots. That's probably going to be the hottest topic of this show. So I'm just going to pass the baton off to Josh to take over for right now. Minnesota at 8. Are they too high? Are they too low? Are they just about right? What are your thoughts of seeing the Minnesota Gophers ranked number 8 in the country?
I don't know. This will get some comments this week. I don't think they're a top 8 team in college football. They prove that they're a legitimate contender in the Big Ten. Let's get that out of the way. I think that's exactly what they did. Power to them. Biggest game in 10 years at home for Minnesota, and they won. Good for them. They deserve to be they deserved the respect that they are now getting because they deserve respect. They are not a top 8 team in college football, in my opinion. And the way that I want to do that is, if you guys disagree with me, go ahead and tell me. But looking at the rankings, the 7 teams that are ahead of them, LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, Alabama, Oregon, Utah. I think they are all better than Minnesota. And I know they beat Penn State, and they beat them convincingly. And I'm not going to say that 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to pull a Logan Paul and say 9 times out of 10 Penn State's winning that game, and that one game on Saturday was that 1 time out of 10. I'm not going to say that. But I think, overall, I think Penn State is the better team. And I'm not trying to take that away from Minnesota.
Did you just quote Logan Paul?
That's unfortunate.
All right.
KSI. Penn State, Oklahoma, I think Florida, and maybe Auburn, I think are better football teams than Minnesota.
So where they're ranked, like Josh and I were talking when we were watching the selection show, saying they should probably be about 10. Thinking about it now, I'd probably put them at 9 to be exact. And it makes sense, of course, to have them over Penn State at this point. Whether Penn State is the better team or not, I think Josh and I think that in general they still probably are. Regardless, you can't have them ahead of Minnesota at this point. Minnesota's undefeated, and they beat Penn State in the head-to-head, so of course they're going to be ahead of Penn State. I think Oklahoma's better than them, and there's a few one-loss teams that are still ahead of Minnesota. For that reason, I would have Oklahoma ahead of the Gophers, and I'd have Minnesota at 9. But yeah, they won a big game, and they moved all the way up into the top 10. I will say, though, about this whole Minnesota thing is I know there were like a lot of comments this week about, am I going to shave my head? Spoiler, no. Am I going to show up for the show? Yes. I think this all started when, there was some Q&A question like, which undefeated team like 5 weeks ago are you not sold on? And I said, well, Minnesota, considering they beat South Dakota State by 8, they beat Fresno by 3 in double overtime, they beat 3-win Purdue by like 7. I was like, they don't have a single impressive win. And then I was asked, are they going to beat Penn State? And I said, well, no, they're not. And and that somehow turned into me shaving my head, which I'm going to keep this. I used to have a buzz cut. I'm past that stage.
Lyle, I still think you still have time, buddy. We can have the intern go grab the razor.
We could dress you up like PJ Fleck.
Man, a PJ Fleck haircut.
Dude, PJ Fleck's got some swag to him.
Oh my God.
He does. He absolutely does.
The fact that this man wears a shirt and tie.
All right, Lyle, get over here. I had mine packed just in case.
Are you using your Manscaped razor?
Speaking of which, this episode is brought to you by Manscaped, the Perfect Package 2.0. It's the perfect package for your perfect package. If you nip your sack,
no,
send it back.
Okay. I don't even like this show. I don't know why I'm on it.
The fact that PJ Fleck has kids dressing up like him going to the game is so much swagger. So much.
You know what?
swagger.
Next year, we're all going to get together for Halloween. We're going to do another episode of the Harris Highlight Show. And you know what? I'll buy a Minnesota quarter zip, and I'll be PJ Fleck, and I'll wear a bald cap if we do it.
We love it.
I'll do it now. I'll wear a bald cap.
Do it now. I will say this.
Do it live.
Live. On Tuesday. I think this is a great thing for the Big Ten. This solidifies the Big Ten with the most teams ranked so far this year. This team right here, I'm sorry, not being one of them in the playoff pool, but all the other ones were in it. But having 6 teams ranked in the playoff poll is the best thing possible for the Big Ten, led by, obviously, Ohio State. But a very close second, you could say, is this Minnesota team in what we have seen so far from a talent and a consistency standpoint that we've seen so far this year. Having this Minnesota team row the boat, bringing that over, of course, is a solid thing in favor of the Big Ten because it shows that any team can beat any team in the Big Ten. Having Penn State, who everyone was like, they're the second best team in the Big Ten, no team can touch them, maybe Ohio State, lose to this Minnesota team, it's the strongest conference in my opinion.
Spot on. Spot on, Brady. Well, boys.
Stop.
As the latest Minnesota Gophers fan,
Not a Gophers fan.
Not a
as
Gophers
about
fan.
1 week ago, I expected nothing less from my Gophers out there
my
on the
God.
field. Now, from the opening kickoff, they had it in their eyes. I don't know if you guys saw it. I saw it. Brady,
saw it.
did you see it?
Did I see what? The look in their eyes?
Yes.
Dude, he looked me straight in the eyes and said, let's get it on.
Minnesota said, let's get it on. And right away, early on, I think it took about 3 minutes for my Minnesota Gophers to take the lead over the Nittany Lions. And from then on, I knew it was over. Now, I know Lyle tried sending a text saying, here we go with the Joker gift, saying, you know, it's a tie game and whatnot. But at that time, I wasn't worried. I knew deep down that this is what my Minnesota Gophers could do. And they proved it. They proved to everyone that they are, in fact, for real, They are, in fact, legit. And they are college football playoff contenders.
I'm now gonna insert a GIF of Will Ferrell as Elf and say, "You sit on a throne of lies, Blake."
I mean, we do need to admit that,
Thank you,
what was
Brady.
impressive was how loud that place was getting, and the fans cheering, the noise was getting in and around the players' ears, letting them know that they appreciate their effort.
I am upset though. I get having Alabama LSU be game day, but the fact that Minnesota had never gotten game day before, that's probably going to be their best chance. Seeing the way that stadium was, especially after they stormed the field, that should have been game day.
No, it should not
Yes,
have been.
yes,
You
it
know what?
should
should not have been.
No, it's
Yes.
Alabama, LSU, and LSU won on the road?
I still hate having like the same teams over and over. I think them
Blake.
going to Minnesota for the first time with the biggest game, that would have been cool.
It would have been cool, but it was 1 versus
I know.
2 at the time.
I know that you're not going to have it. Oh boy, nice
And you know
shirt,
what?
Brady.
And you know what? Minnesota still plays Wisconsin. It's still possible. Like, I mean, there's other big games that week. It's probably going to be Ohio State, Michigan, but still, it's
Oh, I
not
know.
out of the
I'm not
question.
saying that it would have gotten over it. I'm just saying it would have been cooler if it would have been at Minnesota for the first time.
I just mean Minnesota still has a chance. On
Oh, I know.
November 30th, they play Wisconsin, so it's possible.
I mean, okay, overall, I mean, yes, I did pick Minnesota last week to win. Now, they said it's because I was the only one. If one of these guys would have picked Minnesota, I still would have gone with them.
I'm
I was
not
kind
so
of-
sure about
I was-
that.
I was
And you would have
very-
only tweeted that you were right and not the other person was
And
right.
every
with
time
you.
this happens on the show, you only tweet when you're right.
I said, guys, you guys are
Boom,
more than
roasted.
welcome to tweet whatever you'd like, and I didn't see one tweet from you guys this past weekend, so again, that is not on me. I thought this was an overall great game. Penn State had their chance at the end. They were on like the 15-yard line. They were driving. They had a penalty. They couldn't just get the ball in the end zone. Then they threw a pick to end the game. So Penn State, they did have their chance, but this was a great game for Minnesota. I mean, this is their most convincing win of the season. Now, it is kind of tough to determine how good they truly are because, as Lyle likes to allude to their previous schedule, they don't have many quality wins or any quality wins for that matter. So it's kind of tough to really rank them at this point. I think jumping 9 spots, I think that's a little much, especially considering the fact that they have nothing. They have nothing up to this point. I think they're going based off the hype right now and whatnot. I would have moved them probably from 17 to like 11, maybe 10. I think that would have been fair. Maybe they're trying to build some hype for this game against Iowa this upcoming week. Maybe they're trying to just build some more hype around Minnesota. Who knows? But overall, a very great game from Minnesota. Penn State, I mean, they were the favorite. They were favored by 7, and it just didn't happen. Now, if this game would have been, at Penn State, I think this would have by far been a different outcome. I think Penn State might have been on the other end of things by like 10 or so points. But they didn't. Minnesota wins, and it's a great underdog story for right now. At least we got that to ride with. And my PJ Fleck, I mean, I kind of had this in the notes. Maybe it's kind of a little crazy to say he's a top 5 coach right now. But what he did at Western Michigan, I mean, he took them. Were they undefeated, or did they lose that one game that one year when they were like 12-1?
Who?
Western Michigan, when he was at the helm like 3 or 4 years ago.
I thought they were undefeated.
So they might have been undefeated. He was great over there. He came over to Minnesota, and they're currently going back to last season on an 11-game winning streak. He's doing things that are fantastic over there
They were
for Minnesota.
13-1.
So they were 13-1. So PJ Fleck, again, he might not be a top 5 coach in football, but he's up there. I think he recently just signed an extension with Minnesota, which might be
7 years.
which might be a little tough because I feel like in a year or two, some of these powerhouse teams might be calling his name because I get he has this connection with Minnesota, but if all of a sudden a year or two from now, I don't know who's going to be available. But if one of these guys are calling, I think he might be picking up and saying, "How you doing?"
His out clause has to be pretty favorable for Minnesota because they're like, we'll give you 7 years, but your out clause and your buyout's going to be pretty low. So it's going to be, all right, do you want to stay and get that money? Or do you want to take that another job, take the risk of the job insecurity of another job, and take a lower buyout clause? It has to be like that. For a 7-year contract, It has to be.
And if he ever goes anywhere else, like especially if he goes to like a college football like blue blood program, not a chance in the world that team then puts an "or" as their helmet stripe.
0 chance.
Like any chance Ohio State or Michigan or Penn State, even if we're just looking at Big Ten schools, would ever do that is minuscule.
Yeah.
Only Minnesota would do that.
I agree. Okay, so I knew we were going to talk about this game earlier. Are we still on the committee stuff, the top 25 stuff, or have we moved on?
Well, I mean, is there anything else in here that you just want to quickly mention? Baylor, they're 9-0.
I had one problem. I had one problem with that. Look, there's a lot of one-loss teams in the top 10, 11. Baylor's undefeated. They also beat Kansas State, a ranked team, by 19. So why are they behind two teams that have 2 losses? That I do not understand. Minnesota, if Minnesota's going to be that high for all the terrible wins they've had for getting one good win, shouldn't Baylor be like right around there with them?
And I think that's something else that goes along the same thing is how this is a playoff committee question that we can debate all we want. What I want to know is I feel like there is no precedent. I feel like there is not a specific standard on which some of these teams are ranked by. Because as we see from Minnesota, they're super high on Minnesota, so they're going to move them all the way up to 8 at 9-0. But at the same time, if you really think that Minnesota is that good, why are you dropping Penn State, for example, 5 spots? That's one thing. But also, if you look at Minnesota, they have the huge win over Penn State. That's awesome. They deserve to be getting respect right now. But at the same time, I feel like Baylor almost has a better resume, and they're undefeated too. In fact, they're 9-0, same record
They
as
definitely
Minnesota.
have better wins, and Minnesota just has the better overall.
The better
win.
overall
But
victory.
having Baylor at 13, especially dropping them 1 spot, I think Baylor should easily be. Are they better than Oklahoma? Are they better than Florida? Probably not. But at this point, you have to go based on what you've accomplished this season, and they're one of 5 undefeated teams left. So I think that's bad. And also, the Penn State drop in 5 spots. They were ranked number 4 last week, so people obviously thought that they were one of the 4 best teams in the country. And if you really think that Minnesota is the 8th best team in the country,
should be dropping 5 spots.
They should be dropping to maybe it's tough at this point because obviously they have to be above them, but then have Minnesota at 9 and have Penn State at even then, maybe just have Penn State still above Utah. I'm not going to put them above Oregon quite yet, but maybe at this point have
7,
have Minnesota at 7, and then have Penn State at 8, so they only fall 4 spots. Because I think dropping Penn State 5 spots is a bit harsh, especially considering they were, 15 yards away from winning this game and still being the 4th best team in the country. So I always say, I forget when it was. I think it was at some point this season where it was like the AP poll, someone dropped, it was like Washington lost to Cal and they fell 14 spots, but Cal was ranked 26. So we're like, well, if they think Cal's a borderline top 25 team, why are you dropping them that much? So Penn State dropping 5 spots, I think that's a bit harsh. I would probably still have them above maybe Utah. And that. So that's my only complaint. And then, again, it's irrelevant at this point, but having Texas go from unranked to ranked to 19. Now, I get they beat Kansas State, who was ranked 16 at the time. You beat them by a field goal at home. I don't think that's warranted.
You got to keep in mind, this is the same this is the same program that 3 years ago beat Notre Dame to open the year and went from unranked to 10th in the country, and they were unranked.
And then Notre Dame went from 10th to unranked. They just flipped spots.
Time.
And Notre Dame wasn't good that year either.
No, they weren't at all.
Oh, my God.
Look, I kind of shrug more about those rankings because the guys that are at 18 through 25 mean so much less, but it's still a little weird to see them move up 6 spots. And it's probably not going to have any effect on the playoff or anything like that, but it's still a little odd.
Yeah, so I took to Twitter, which, by the way, if you'd like to join in on the discussion, follow us at the HHShow_. I asked people what their thoughts were on the rankings. Our good buddy Andrew says Utah should not be at 7. People want to talk about Clemson's weak schedule, but Utah's schedule is about as bad. They should be behind Minnesota and Penn State, so that's exactly what we just said. Football predictions said, so does Kentucky finally get that quality loss that Bama got? Oh, wait, no, that's for basketball instead, because Kentucky just had it.
Just lost to Evansville.
So Sports by JR says Minnesota's jump was insane, but justified. Edgar Hernandez, Bama should be a bit lower. It's unfair that Penn State drops 5 spots, but Bama, despite being dominated for most of the game, only drops 2 spots. Pokey Life 93, surprised by Texas going to 19 after being unranked. Man, a lot of people have the exact same thoughts we do. And DC Sports Fan says, Georgia is too high and Bama and Oregon would jump them, with Oregon ahead of Bama. So if you'd like to share your thoughts on the college football playoff rankings, let us know on Twitter at the HH Show _. But guys, now it's going to be a little fun segment right here, and I'm going to have some interaction on Twitter as well that I'm about to tweet out. We're going to go over some crazy scenarios that could potentially happen. I wrote down about 4, I think. I don't know if you guys added any. We can go to Twitter as well. So if you have any crazy scenarios that can happen, tweet at us and we can go over those as well, because there's some fun ones that can happen. So guys, the first one that I have jotted down, let's just say for fun, that Georgia beats LSU in the SEC title game. and then Minnesota, assuming they go undefeated, beats Ohio State in the Big Ten title game, what would your top 4 be? Now, this could be assuming anything you win. This could be assuming Clemson wins out. This can be assuming that whoever wins the Pac-12, they win out. It could be anything, but let's just say those two things happen. What do you think the top 4 would be?
So Georgia beats LSU in the title, and Minnesota beats Ohio State in the title. I have Georgia in. That's an easy one. You put Georgia in. If Minnesota is still undefeated, then honestly, I would put Minnesota at 4. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I can quickly read you my 4: Clemson, Minnesota, Georgia, LSU. If that happens.
Minnesota at 2.
No, in no order, but
okay.
those 4 are in. Clemson,
So who
Minnesota,
are they again?
Clemson, Minnesota, Georgia, LSU.
Okay. Yeah, I agree.
I have no idea. Like, this is one of the... I saw this question earlier when you first sent the rundown, and I've been thinking about this one all day. Because I like where Lyle went with it, but I don't know. Does that mean Clemson wins there? The ACC?
I mean, if you would, well,
Clemson wins
essentially,
the ACC, they're going to be in it.
Yes.
So Clemson's slotted in a good...
Clemson's one of those teams where it's not like if they have one loss, they're going to be considered. If Clemson loses a game, they're done.
Yes.
I think there's...
Agreed.
There's no chance, unless a lot of chaos happens.
Clemson was slotted originally to be put in a spot to succeed for the playoff rankings. Having them at, 5 originally to start out?
Yeah, they were chilling there.
They were put in a good position to start. Mm-hmm. So you can have Clemson. You have to put Georgia in there. Unless there's, I don't know. I don't know what that Big Ten representative would be. Because if Minnesota, say, loses a game and then beats Ohio State in the title game, where do you go from there?
That's when things get fun.
This is assuming Minnesota goes undefeated, that I have Minnesota in. Because if
I
Minnesota
agree with
loses
that.
a game, they're done too.
Yeah.
See, for mine, if this is the situation, I have these 4 teams making it. I have Georgia and LSU both making it. I have Minnesota making it. And again, if Ohio State's undefeated going into this game and they lose to Minnesota by 3, 4, 5 points, I just find it impossible to keep out Ohio State, especially considering, there a lot of people think they're the best team in the country, even not the second best team.
Yeah.
And just because they lose one game.
But if you lose, you lose. Let me say this: a Power 5 undefeated conference champ will never, ever, 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 ever be left out of the playoff, especially for a team with 1 loss.
Which I think is the stupidest thing, because the whole point is to have the 4 best teams. And if you have Ohio State going at this point, it would be 12-0 with.
Wait, you would have them in over Minnesota?
No, we
I'd
have them over
both
Clemson.
in. I'd have both. I'd have Ohio State, Minnesota, and LSU and Georgia in if this happens.
So you would not have Clemson.
Let me
I would not have
just
them in.
stop here, because there's a question later in the docket that's should last year's success be taken into account. I have a little bit of a thing on this. Past success should not. It should be about this year.
That was the dumbest question I've ever read on the show.
No,
hey,
hang on.
A lot of people still take into account where it's like, well, Clemson last year won 15-0. It's like it's a reasonable thing.
No, let me go on this just for a minute, maybe 2. We'll see. Past success should not be considered at all. But I have I have a problem with people who are already writing off Clemson because in one game they played a conference game on the road and they won by 1 point. Oh, by the way, they still won. So again, past success should not. But when you're looking at what they have right now, what they had last year, they're all back, especially on offense. Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, Justin Ross, T. Higgins, they're all back. And then you know what they've done this year? Outside of that one game against North Carolina and a 2-touchdown win against Texas A&M, who at the time was ranked, every single one of their wins is by 29 or more points. The most points they've allowed all season is 20 points. Like, what do you want them to do? Join an independent in the middle of the season and create a new schedule? Like, all they're doing is killing teams on their schedule, aside from one slip-up. So I don't get this whole Clemson thing.
Well, they're still a Power 5 team, so they still deserve to get in, especially if they win out and they win the conference championship. That's how it is. The only way that a Power 5 champion who went undefeated won't make the playoff is if this 4-team format continues and there's an undefeated conference champion from all 5 Power 5 conferences.
Then sure.
That's the only time that should ever happen.
Then somebody has to be left out.
Yeah, and if that's the case, so let's just say Oregon wins out, or say Oregon's undefeated, Ohio State's undefeated, LSU's undefeated, Clemson's undefeated, and Oklahoma's undefeated. If that's the case right now, that's a huge hypothetical, but if that's the case right now, then you know what? I'm okay if you leave Clemson out.
If there's 5 undefeateds.
Exactly. But right now, I mean, they're killing everybody that they play. Yeah, I don't think I think their schedule is awful.
So
and honestly, about that one comment we read saying Utah has a worse schedule than Clemson does, I think that's debatable, to be totally honest with you.
Well, I just want to ask Josh. So then his situation is he doesn't even have Ohio State in there if they lose just one game.
Me?
No, Lyle did. So I'm saying, would you still, if Ohio State is undefeated, they lose to Minnesota in the title game by, again, like 3 or 4 points, and they're ranked number 2 when that game happens, like, do they fall from 2 to 5?
It depends on how bad LSU's loss to Georgia is in this scenario. It depends. I mean, it's all hypotheticals, right? That's why I think this is tough.
Even at that point, then, if again, let's just say they lose by a field goal, who has the better resume, Ohio State or Clemson?
Who has the
And
better?
It's Ohio State.
Look. So, yeah, you're right. It's Ohio State.
Like I'm not trying to hate on Clemson. I'm just saying I don't know how you can.
What are they supposed to do?
Well,
Exactly.
they can't. Well, I get that you haven't played anyone, but I don't get how you could put them in when Ohio State, they're going to have wins over. It's going to be like 3-4 ranked teams. Now, this is also assuming they beat Penn State and they beat Michigan at the end of the year, because those are going to be 2 top 15 matchups. So even then, if they not get 2 top 15 wins, that's something Clemson doesn't have.
Because rule number 1 : don't lose. You are
So
not
then
going to
if
be
that's the
rewarded
case-
for losing.
If
And
that's the
especially
case,
late.
what it comes down
that's the stupidest rule.
no, it's not. What it comes
think it
down
is.
to is don't lose.
You
No.
cannot be rewarded for losing, especially if you lose late. If you lose late, you're in
The
big trouble.
reason the college football playoff was created was to get the 4 best teams.
I agree.
Now I also understand that Clemson, they are probably behind. It's probably them and Bama is like 1 or 2, whatnot. I'm just saying, I get it's not Clemson's fault that they play in the worst Power 5 conference. It's not their fault that they have to schedule Wofford, that they have to play all these awful teams. I get that.
Wofford's not in their conference. They did that on their own.
Well, I know, well, because they have like some like rule where they're like required to play like one of those. It's a weird rule, but I understand that they play awful teams. I'm just saying, I just don't see how you can have a team like Ohio State where offensively, defensively, they're each top 5. They're probably going to finish the season with like 4 top 15 wins. And because they have 1 loss to a team that, if they lose to Minnesota is going to be like the 3rd ranked team at that point.
Yeah.
I just don't understand how you can all of a sudden Ohio State, who Lyle said shouldn't have even moved from number 1, he thinks they should still be number 1, how you can put them from essentially 1 to 5 for losing a close game to, at that time, Minnesota's going to be ranked in the top 4. Again, this is why there should be at least 6 teams, because someone's going to get screwed. And this year, more than ever, is going to be a year where 1 or 2 teams get screwed. I think if you're 13-0, that's great. UCF was 13-0.
UCF is not a Power 5
Yeah,
team.
that is not part of this argument.
I'm still
here's
saying
here's what happens in this.
Lyle's thing was just win. They win 13-0, and
No,
They didn't
no,
play
no,
anybody.
no, no,
And
no,
who has
no,
Clemson
no,
played
no.
aside from Texas A&M?
Clemson will be a
Clemson is still in a Power 5 conference.
and will
I
be
mean,
undefeated at conference champion. They've won however many games in a row now.
Here, the
20
way to settle this
something.
argument for me, I mean, it's a hypothetical. That's why it's stupid. But look, if it really comes down to debate, what you have to look at is, for me, Clemson's in. Clemson's in this scenario. Minnesota's in for me in this scenario. If they're undefeated, 2 undefeated conference champions, Power 5 schools, they have to be in, especially if Minnesota's beating Ohio State, they're beating Penn State, and if Clemson's undefeated, they're a Power 5 conference champion. They're defending national champions. But I think it depends on who else gets in, because in this case, I think Georgia has to be put in. They had the 1 hiccup to South Carolina in this case, but their resume also says that they're deserving to get in. Yes, somebody's going to get screwed over. And for me, it's not Clemson, it's not Georgia, it's not Minnesota. It's either LSU or Ohio State. One of those teams has to get screwed over in this scenario, and that's just what we have to come to terms with. And it's a team that's not a conference champion. It's a team that has a loss. So the way that I look at it is, okay, number 1 out of those 2, who had the better wins and who had the better loss? Also, how much are they losing by in their conference championship game? Is Georgia putting the smackdown on LSU, and is Minnesota beating Ohio State by a last-second field goal? For me, that's Ohio State. Ohio State gets that 4th spot. Not necessarily in that order, but they get that 4th spot.
You don't have to like it, but this is how the committee's going to go with it. Like, I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, again, we'll see what happens. Now, here's another scenario that could happen. Let's just say Baylor wants to get in on the fun, and they go undefeated. Then what happens with essentially the same scenario that we just talked about?
So if it's the same scenario, then for me, it's, again, I think it's tough because you're right in the aspect that it's designed to have the 4 best teams in college football. So that that needs to be taken into account. But if you have Baylor undefeated winning the Big 12, you have Minnesota winning the Big 10 undefeated, you have Georgia with one loss beating LSU and winning the SEC, and then you have Clemson going undefeated. For me, it's those four.
Yeah, you got 3 undefeated.
It has to be.
Mine's Clemson, Baylor, Minnesota, and then Georgia because Georgia won their conference championship and beat LSU.
And again, I can name multiple teams in college football who I think are better than both Baylor and Minnesota, even if that scenario happens.
Yeah.
There are teams that I think
I agree.
are better.
I think Ohio State's the best team in the country. I still do. And I think when it comes down to it, I can see them hoisting the trophy at the end of the year. But if they lose
if you
in the
lose
conference
when it matters most,
you're in trouble.
Yeah.
That's just how it goes.
So let's say that now we got a few more down here. Ohio State, they lose to Michigan, but they win the Big Ten. Georgia beats LSU, and Baylor still does go undefeated.
what are we talking? So Minnesota then makes the Big Ten championship, are we saying, and loses to Ohio State?
So Minnesota loses, but Ohio State now all of a sudden has one loss to Michigan. So now you have a team like maybe Bama. You maybe have a team like the winner of the Oregon-Utah game, or maybe one of those one-loss teams now, they have a case against Ohio State, who already has one loss going into the Big Ten title game.
I would, in that situation, have Baylor, Clemson, Georgia, and then Ohio State, because Ohio State still won their conference, and they would beat a really good Minnesota team.
Yeah, all right.
So essentially, Brady, feel free to say anything in there if you'd like.
Dude, they are going at each other's heads. I don't know. The one
They're all hypotheticals.
Oh, exactly, and that's why it's dumb. Like you said, they're all hypotheticals.
Well, I think that makes it more fun.
So if Indiana beats Michigan next week, if they beat Penn State this week, and if they beat Purdue in the last week, they'll finish the season 10-2.
Go Hoosiers.
Is that a hypothetical? Damn right. Is that going to happen? Hell no.
What?
But it
What?
could happen.
He's right.
Okay.
He's right.
I'm just saying,
All right,
it's
so-
all about hypotheticals.
That's true.
All right, guys.
So we could come up with any possible scenario. Utah loses out, Oregon loses out. What happens in the Pac-12?
USC goes to the Pac-12 championship,
There
baby.
you go. Against Oregon State.
Oh my gosh. I really want this to happen.
Because, like we said, it's a hypothetical.
Wait, that means ASU would lose to Oregon State.
Shh, stop talking.
Okay.
Hypothetical, Josh. Hypothetical.
Hypothetical.
So, I mean, since about all these scenarios that have happened, so I'm assuming that, depending on what happens, do you guys think that, like, Alabama, Oklahoma, and then the winner of Oregon, Utah have any chance? Because with all these different scenarios happening, it seems like there's no room for any of these teams to make it in.
I still think Alabama's one of the 4 best teams in the country, but, I mean, as it sits right now, they're only one spot out. And like I said, things seem to find their way to play itself out as time goes on. But, I mean, yeah, the fact that they're probably not going to play in a conference title game now, and if everything holds true to where it is right now, I mean, there might not be a spot for them. I think there's a chance, but they probably need a little bit of help.
Alabama's still in playoff contention for me, but it's getting to, especially after this week's game against Iowa State. Yeah, I think it's looking a little grim for OU, Utah, and Oregon. That's the way that I look at it.
I think Bama still has the best shot of any team not 1 through 4.
Yeah.
Just because it's Alabama.
Yep.
And they're sitting there kind of like how Clemson was last week. They're sitting in that 5th spot waiting for one team ahead of them to slip up.
I still had Alabama in my top 4 this week. So
Yeah.
I think Georgia's good.
See, now that's the thing with Alabama, where it's you take into account the name factor. I mean, we talk about Clemson not really playing anyone. Alabama's schedule has been worse than Clemson's. I mean, they have played no one. Both Alabama and Clemson have played Texas A&M, and they both beat them. Alabama's was by a few more points, but Alabama's schedule has been awful.
Okay.
Like I get they're probably one of the 4 best teams, but if you're taking into account where we're going based off these teams with one loss. Now I get it. Alabama's was to LSU, but why does Alabama get the edge over an Oregon or Utah that wins the Pac-12? Why do they get the edge over an Oklahoma that'll probably win the Big 12? Are they just getting the edge because they are Alabama?
Well, to play devil's advocate, they're FPI, they're 3rd. Strength of record, they're 10. But
Because they've played LSU. I mean, looking at the schedule, Duke, New Mexico State, South Carolina, Southern Miss, Ole Miss,
South
Tennessee,
Carolina has a good win.
Arkansas. They have a good win, but they're also 4-6.
to finish what I was
Texas A&M's, I think, the only team above 500 that they've played aside from LSU.
to finish what I was going to say, they're third in FPI, 10th in strength of record, but it probably doesn't matter in the end if one of these teams wins their conference, because if Alabama doesn't play in a conference championship, let alone win the conference title, they're not going to pick them over a team that actually won their conference, especially with three teams that all have one loss, or whoever it is, three teams with, say it's Oklahoma, Utah, and Bama.
Well, I was just saying because they do have them at 5. I think all you guys still had them at number 4. So I was just asking, is it just because of the Alabama name? Because again, I don't care what their strength of schedule thing is. That has to do with the LSU game. No one here, I think, is above 500.
Okay, but they're still really good. They only lost by 5 to LSU, and LSU is really...
I know that. I'm just saying. I was talking about their strength of schedule. How again, like we go on Clemson. It's worse than Clemson's. It is by far worse than Clemson's because Arkansas 2-8, Tennessee. They're here 5-5. Ole Miss 4-6. South Carolina 4-6. Yeah, Texas A&M's their best one.
Okay,
and
but
they're 6-3.
They've still got Auburn, so that's going to help.
That'll be a good one. But then again, it's like they got Mississippi State coming up 4-5. Western Carolina, I get it. I think Alabama's top 4 probably. If they would have beaten LSU, they probably would have been a lock for the playoff. It's just I just don't know at this point how Alabama can get in unless a lot happens in front of them, because I think Oklahoma deserves to be in more. I think the winner of the Pac-12 would deserve to be in more, and it's probably not going to happen because if one team loses, Bama comes in at 4, and that's probably what's going to happen for the final rankings. I think I saw, I don't know if I could find the photo on ESPN, but Alabama has the 4th best odds to be in the playoff and 4th best odds to win it all compared to some of these other teams where Alabama they're not even going to be in a title game unless LSU slips up.
Well, that probably means that they think that one of the Pac-12 teams or both will lose, and they probably think that Oklahoma and or Baylor lose another time or two, meaning that Alabama would find a way to get in. Again, if there's a one-loss Pac-12 champion or a one-loss Big 12 champion, they'll be in over Alabama. But, there's still a lot of time left.
So lots of chaos that can still happen. Hopefully we get something good, and it's not, because it seems like every year it's always the same 4. There's maybe a contender at the 5th spot. You can make the case right now that 1 through... Penn State's out of the equation, so I'm going to say 1 through 10 with the exception of Penn State. There's 9 teams. Actually, Baylor, there's 10 teams who I still think have a solid chance to crack the top 4. It's just a matter of who's going to, lose and fall out, who's going to have a slip-up game that's going to make things easier, or are we going to legit have, it's, it's the final rankings, and it's these two are guaranteed, but I could see these 3 or 4 teams cracking the final 2, which hopefully that can happen, because I think that'd be fantastic. That'd make things a bit more exciting, especially compared to previous years. But as BK said, these are hypothetical situations. But hypothetical situations are fun because it's fun thinking about what can happen. Because a week from right now, Minnesota can lose to Iowa, and all of a sudden, their chances are done.
Well, my good pal
Ohio State can lose to Rutgers, the 52-point favorites, and then they're done. So a lot can still happen. But it's fun.
My good pal David just sent me a message all about hypotheticals, and if frogs had wings, they wouldn't hop around on their butts all day.
That's true.
Thank you, David. All right, guys, it's time to get to these games now. We pretty much talked about Alabama, LSU, but let's get to more of the game that happened. I know you guys had the TV on during your guys' calls, so you're able to watch it. I had to go through the entire game and sim through it so I can watch it. And what a game.
Well, you left the ASU game early, so didn't you get to watch the end of it?
No, unfortunately. Now, we didn't leave the game early. We just went down to the bottom section early because we had to beat the rush out. So, guys... Overall, first reaction, what was your reaction? This is the game of the year. This is one of the best games of the last few years. It's a shame that one of these teams had to lose. We couldn't do the old-fashioned NFL tie system where they could have been split down the middle. What were your guys' thoughts from this game, and what was your number one takeaway?
Yet earlier you said this game shouldn't have been game day.
I'm not saying it should have been game day. I'm saying I wish it would have been at Minnesota because they've never hosted, and it would have been a cool first time for Minnesota. Obviously, this was going to be game day. This was game day 10 weeks ago before this was even going to be a matchup. But if this would have been 10 versus 15, it still would have been game day. Every LSU-Alabama game is going to be game day. I'm just saying I think it would have been more cool having it in Minnesota. That's all.
All right. I think LSU is the best team in the country. I think Joe Burrow is I don't want to say he's a lock for the Heisman because he's not. He's my front runner now. I have him over Jalen. I have him over Justin Fields. Still have him over Jonathan Taylor. And I have him over Tua. like we all talked about last week, we knew Tua was going to play this game. He looked hurt to me, and Bama looked still pretty good on offense. So, if you're Nick Saban, I'll take it. Or if I'm Nick Saban, I'm going to take it. Here's what I want to talk about. For you Alabama fans out there.
I know where you're going with this.
Where do you guys get off saying that you guys should fire Nick Saban because he's washed? Now, I know that not every Alabama fan feels that way. But like, how does even one Alabama fan feel that way? Nick Saban is the best coach in college football in the last 15 years.
Maybe the best coach in history. I mean, he's got as many national
might be the best coach in history.
championships as Bear Bryant, doesn't he? They both have 6, right?
Mm-hmm. And there have been, a lot of really good college football coaches, and he might be the best of all time. And yet some Alabama fans, a good portion on social media, and this was not said like satirically, if that's a word. It is a word. Thank you. Fact check. Satirically or like tongue-in-cheek or anything like that. So many people were serious about losing to LSU one time and firing Nick Saban. I just think that's like, who has the audacity to do that?
Bama fans.
I mean, the world is not ending. You know that you have a good team, and you know you have a really good coach. When you lose, and so many people still have you in the college football playoff. Like, are you kidding me? Oh my God. Like, I can't. Like, God, with the voice and everything. Like, I'm just so annoyed by this that my voice goes up and down like a roller coaster, and I feel like I'm going through puberty again with my voice. Jeez, man. That's insane. That's actually insane.
Yeah,
It's just, wow.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the thought process is behind that. I don't know if that's like rage from the loss or what. But I mean, I think literally every single other team in the whole country, except for maybe Dabo at Clemson at this point, would take Nick Saban as their coach in an absolute heartbeat. So appreciate what you have, Alabama fans. He's only won a trillion titles or whatever in the last couple of years.
All the ones before
I
were
don't
playing.
think it's that many, Lyle.
I know. The game in general, what impressed me the most? First off, these two offenses are the real deal. I mean, I would say there's pretty close to 10 guys between the two offenses this past weekend that are going to one day hear their name called in the first round. I mean, that's how many good offensive skill players and maybe a couple linemen too that there were on both sides of the ball. LSU's receiving core, Alabama's receiving core, the two quarterbacks, of course. I mean, it was just an absolute offensive shootout the whole game, which is fun. That's a lot more fun than 9-6.
It's the two best wide receiving cores in the country.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That was a whole lot of fun to see a ton of points scored. But even more so than that, what impressed me the most, it might sound cliche, but it's Joe Burrow. And here's why. Some of the throws he was making against a couple guys in the Alabama secondary that also have very high NFL profiles, a guy like Trayvon Diggs, for example, Joe Burrow was picking them apart. I mean, he was making some throws that are like top-notch NFL level, and he was just absolutely having a field day against the Bama secondary. For that reason, after what I saw today, this guy looks like he is seriously, I mean, I know it's been rumored for a while now, he seriously looks like he's going to be the first name called in this upcoming NFL draft. I mean, not only does he have the ability to run, which is kind of like a sneaky asset that he has in his game, but his ability to pinpoint throws and just find open receivers at ease is unbelievable. Like, this guy's got a serious ceiling in the NFL, which is crazy to say because last year he wasn't that good, and now he's my Heisman frontrunner too, not by a lot, but he still is. It's his to lose at this point. And some of the throws he was making against some really, really good defensive skill players was just unparalleled.
Well, that was the question I was going to bring up next, and Lyle took it. I was going to say, is it officially now his Heisman to lose, which I think it is.
Yeah, so he's my number one now too. Not by a whole lot. What Jalen Hurts is still doing is pretty remarkable, but if Joe Burrow has a good last 4 games, it's his Heisman.
Great.
Brady, you got anything?
Do I ever?
That's a great question.
Insert Lyle whistle sound effect here.
Oh.
No, but it's Burrow's to lose. I think it's pretty simple there. But what killed me the most, and we haven't talked about this, and this was major news in college football, and apparently we're a college football show, was Chase Young being suspended. But hey, I guess we'll save that for another show.
Well, we'll save that when we're not talking about Alabama, LSU.
But we were talking about the Heisman, and that's just why I brought it up, was because I had Chase Young in top 3 in my Heisman, and now he's no longer in it.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, maybe in a bit we can get to it. But yeah, overall, what a fantastic game. Again, I'm upset that I couldn't watch this live because going through and pretty much just, again, skimming it, it was quite the game. These are probably the 2 best offenses in college football. I mean, they probably have some of the best defenses as well, but the defense, when you're going against that kind of offense, it's tough to really show up. That was an incredible game. The fact that LSU, but I think the highlight of that entire game, guys, is that now America has their new unsung hero, and that is head coach Ed Orgeron. Because we unfortunately we can't play the clip that one of his players recorded in the locker room after, but I think it was something along the lines of "Roll Tide, later with you." Which was fantastic. In his post-game interview, he's crying. He could barely speak a word. He's like,
Can he ever speak
that's
words?
True. Coach O, what a guy. I mean, he is way to go, Coach O. We love Coach O. Go Tigers. That was fantastic. But yeah, Joe Burrow, it's officially his Heisman to lose. Where again, you could still you can make the case for Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields. Their numbers have been insane this year. But Joe Burrow now, like at the time, I think has like 3 top 12 wins or something like that. It's incredible. His numbers are insane. So,
Hello?
I think we got Coach O on the phone if you want to talk to him.
we do?
Yeah,
Coach?
You want to talk to Coach O?
Coach, you had a great win this upcoming week, or this past week. You know, a huge win for not only you guys, but the state of Louisiana. What's the vibe like over there in Louisiana?
Yeah, man, Louisiana's great. It's a lot of fun down here in the bayou. You know, our guys, their guys, screw their guys, but our guys were great. You know, Roll Tide who? I don't know. But Joe Burrow, he's a real deal, man. You know, after this game, I went home with my wife, and, you know, we sat on the couch, ate a ham sandwich, some chips, and watched SportsCenter, man. It was a great time.
Well, it sounds like you had a great night,
time.
Coach O. You had a great night. And we'd love to have you on in future episodes if your schedule can work out.
Anytime, man. Go Tigers.
Oh, well, that was Coach O, graciously calling us from the beautiful state of Louisiana. So he's probably out there recruiting, to be honest. He's probably out there recruiting right now. So a great win for LSU. I mean, that was overall a fantastic game. So, yeah, Burrow, Heisman to lose, LSU, the new number 1 team, Bama. I also saw some of the tweet that, like, fans were filing out of the exits at halftime because they probably never seen their team down 20. So, I guess this past national championship, they were down 21 points. But I guess in person, a bunch of these Alabama fans didn't see it. But what an incredible game. Now, we kind of pretty much already went over Minnesota, Penn State, so we can kind of skip that. Same thing kind of with these two, but I guess I'm just going to ask the question. Oklahoma, they lost to Kansas State a few weeks ago. They came back and made it close, but that was a blowout game. They let Iowa State come back. Iowa State almost won. You know, had there been a penalty called in the end zone that wasn't called, they probably would have won. Now, I know a lot is going to have to go their way, but currently, as of right now, do you guys think that Oklahoma is one of the 4 best teams in the country, or maybe higher than, what is it, they're ranked 9th, I think? Higher than or 10? Do you guys think 10. They're better than their number 10 ranking says they are?
I have them at number 8. And the only reason I have them at number 8 is because that earlier in the show, I had Minnesota at 10, and I had Penn State still within the top 9, and Lyle made a good point and said, you know what, at least for now, even though we both kind of think that Penn State is still probably the better team, there's just no reason to have Minnesota behind Penn State right now, so I'm fine with that too. So I moved Minnesota to 9, Penn State at 10, and I have Oklahoma at 8. But I think that they would compete with the 7 teams that I have ahead of them easily. I don't think they're a top 4 team in college football.
I also do not currently think they're a top 4 team. I'm like Josh. I have them right at 8, and because of that, yeah, they're still right in the thick of things for this college football playoff hunt. They're on the outside looking in, and they'll need a little bit of help. They'll certainly have to win their conference, but it's not impossible.
They have top 4 talent, but they're not a top 4 team, and that's a very big difference. They have all the pieces. They have all the individuals, but they can't be the cohesive unit to be a top 4 team. The pieces, yes. The team as a whole, I'm going to say no.
Spot on. I mean, that's pretty much what I was going to say as well. So we're going to move on from these games. We're going to talk about the upcoming slate of games. So we got some good games this upcoming week. The first one's Baylor, Oklahoma, which is going to be game day this upcoming week. So now, maybe I should have worded this differently, but if Baylor beats Oklahoma, guys, where do you think they should be ranked? Where do you think the committee will put them in next week's rankings?
I think Baylor's a good football team. I don't think they're a great football team. I don't think it's a fluke that they're undefeated. I think a lot of people might think that it's a fluke, or maybe they think that they're amazing. I'm a little in between. I think they're a good team, and I think if they win this week, then they'll get a lot more respect, and I think they'll get the respect they deserve. I think they're a top 10 team if they beat Oklahoma this week. I would not put them higher than 8 or 9, though.
I would put them at 8 if they win. And then if they beat Texas too, there's some legitimacy to have the argument to move them up a little bit more. But for this week, I'd say right around 8 or 9.
Yeah.
I'd put them, if they were to beat Oklahoma, depending on what is done ahead of them, when Penn State loses this week, I really think Oklahoma.
I caught it, Brady. Don't worry, I caught it.
Baylor could jump to that 10. I don't think them going higher than 10 because it's not that marquee win because it is such a close matchup.
Yeah, I agree. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, if they can get the win, then I'm going to be fully on the Baylor hype train because they've had some close games this year, Baylor. I mean, they had to come back and they beat TCU in overtime. They've had a few close games. I think Texas Tech were in the year. That was another close one. So if they can get the job against Oklahoma, that's going to be very convincing. I think they'll probably move up to like 8 or 7. All right, guys. So Minnesota, I think this has the chance to be like the most... The game I want to have my eyes on the most is the upcoming week because they're going to be on the road at Iowa. Iowa's ranked number 20. Now, Iowa seems like they're that one team where high-ranked teams come to die, where it seems like Iowa's always that one team that knocks them off. Now, what a matchup for Minnesota following that Penn State game, which I feel like this actually helps Minnesota because if they would have been playing like one of the bottom feeders of the Big Ten, that could have been more of a trap game where they know Iowa's legit, so they're going to have to show up. Now, if Minnesota can get the win over Iowa, now I know we had this kind of debate earlier on about how I said, is Minnesota legit, where you guys said they're not legit, but they've earned your respect, or they've earned the respect of the country. Yeah, that's good and all. But if Minnesota goes on the road, beats number 20 Iowa, and Minnesota now is ranked 6th next week, will you guys fully admit that yes, Minnesota is in fact the 6th best team in the country?
I will not. Yeah. There's a lot of other factors in play. If teams ahead of them lose this upcoming week, then yeah. If they beat Iowa and other teams lose, then yeah, maybe I'll admit that they're a top 6 team if they even get up to 6. I don't know. I like Iowa. I don't think that they're a great football team. I think they're really good defensively. Their offense is whatever. And I think they're a very typical Big Ten team for me. They're not super flashy. They get the job done. They beat teams that they should beat. And playing at home, it'll be a tough atmosphere. I think Minnesota has what it takes to get the win, though. So it'll be interesting, but I think there's going to be other factors at play. Because as it sits right now, there is no reason for me to drop any of these 7 teams that are currently ahead of Minnesota down if Minnesota beats Iowa.
Yeah, the one team they could maybe jump is Utah just because they haven't had a fantastic strength of schedule. So if Minnesota has 2 straight ranked wins over what was then number 4 Penn State and then what would be then number 20 Iowa, then sure, they can at least move up a spot. But and like Blake said, they've earned my respect. They clearly are a very, very competitive and very, very quality football team. For me to really believe they're legit and to make me forget about all those wins at the beginning of the year, the 7-point win against South Dakota State, the overtime win at Fresno State, the win against Purdue by 7 points, for me to really forget about that, they're going to have to show that they can beat Ohio State, and that's not going to happen for another few weeks if we get to that point. So, again, they will have more so earned my respect with another win. And I'll take them even more seriously than I do this week. But to really believe they're legit, they're going to have to go beat or at least play Ohio State close.
Minnesota has done everything right up to this point. Now, I don't remember. I think Blake may have been the one who said it. Was Iowa's one of those weird places to play. At night, usually. This game's at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So, which makes it, or it might be 4, depending on if... No, it's
depending on the whole time zone thing.
Yeah. No, I think it's 2 in the afternoon. That's what makes it a little different. Is Iowa in the afternoon is much different than Iowa at night, especially when they do the blackout and the yellow out at Iowa. So I think Minnesota's done everything right up to this point, and they've proven to me that they're a top team in the Big Ten. I said that earlier in the show. And if they can pick up this win, I'm not going to be finally convinced. I'm going to have an extended confidence in Minnesota.
I like it. I'm already convinced. So if they get a win, that'll just be another one for the bonus one. But again, Minnesota's schedule moving forward is absolutely fantastic. I mean, they got Iowa and they got Wisconsin, and I forget who the third game they have is. Brady, do you know?
Who is this, Minnesota?
Yeah, Minnesota. I forget who their third game is, so I can just get it up right here in
It's
3.
like, I'm pretty sure it's a
2,
nobody.
1, and it is. Oh, I think it's
Northwestern.
Northwestern. Yeah, it's Northwestern. So
At
Northwestern's a win.
Northwestern.
So they got
Okay.
Northwestern sandwiched between Wisconsin and Iowa. So they can pick up those 2 wins. I like what Lyle said about them having to beat Ohio State. But even still, if you can go on the road, beat Iowa, then beat Wisconsin at home, that's still very convincing to
All
me.
right, that's
Unless
fair.
they lose to like 60 by Ohio
That's
State.
fair. Let me rephrase. If they beat Iowa next week and then they beat Wisconsin too, if they beat 3 straight ranked teams,
Yeah.
I will be 100% sold. But let's see that happen.
Moving on out to the final, and this is a very good game as well, kind of flying under the radar, and that's Georgia versus Auburn. So obviously, if Georgia loses, then I think they're officially out because it'll be tough even if they beat LSU to be a 2-loss team that makes it in. But Auburn, though, now it's kind of tough with Auburn already having those 2 losses, but they have a win against Oregon. I mean, they can have a win against number 4 Georgia. They lost to LSU by 3. They did lose to Florida by 11. Obviously, Auburn's not going to be cracking the college football playoff, but if Auburn can get the job done against Georgia, Auburn can kind of sneak their way in from number 12 to maybe like number 9, number 8, number 7. And again, I think it's unless an absolute total anarchy happens because Auburn's likely not going to be in the title game unless LSU loses the rest of their games and they beat Alabama. But hey, Auburn, they could play what's the name of the word when like you spoil it for someone? That's like
Play upset.
Nah, there's like some word for it. I don't know, but Auburn they can make things a lot easier on us if they were to beat Georgia this week.
They can, but just like how I said, I'll believe it when I see it when Minnesota beats 3 ranked teams. I'll believe it when I see it when Bo Nix beats Georgia and Alabama.
Hey man, Bo Nix. Speaking of Bo Nix, let's see what his last stat line was against Ole Miss. Shall we? 30 of 44 for 340 yards. Is Bo Nix blossoming into an elite quarterback before our very eyes?
Yes.
Now, he did have 0 touchdowns, but he did rush for one. So
Josh was talking about this like a week ago. He has just the weirdest stat lines like ever. Like every single week.
Every week?
I hate Bo Nix because, again, if he doesn't rush on that 4th down to get that first down in that game, Oregon is literally ranked 3rd right now. They're undefeated and they're ranked 3rd. But no, the man that is known as Bo Nix just has to just have that incredible drive where he did look good on that drive. He did look good. He looked great on that drive. The entire game he was awful. And that one drive, Bo Nix just defeats the Oregon Ducks and essentially ruins any hopes and chances I had at Oregon making the play. But hey, I'm telling you guys, the year's going to be 2027.
Speaking of Oregon
Bo
making
Nix
the playoff,
is going to be investigated, and the win is going to be vacated, and
It's not
Oregon
gonna
will
happen.
still finish the season undefeated.
until they lose
Yes.
to
Don't-
Arizona State in 2 weeks. Speaking of Oregon making the playoffs, so Rob Mullins, the athletic director at Oregon, he's the playoff committee chairman. Do you guys know some of the occupations of some of the other people on the committee?
Well, we went over it last week.
Was it last
Well,
week?
there's-
Yes, we
a
said
lot of them
everyone.
are former ADs. And
Well, there's like
Yes.
there's like
We went
I mean,
over them all.
There's Ronnie Lott, and then there's
Yeah.
like Joe Castiglione, and then there's
Joe Castiglione, not the broadcaster though, Lyle.
Oh, okay, then now that
Joe
makes-
Castiglione is the
makes-
announcer for the Boston
I
Red
was gonna
Sox,
say, that
not
makes-
him.
That makes a lot more sense now.
A different. No. The funny one is former U.S. Army Chief of Staff Ray Adirno. Like, I don't know what his qualifications are, but all power to him. I'm down.
All right, so a lot of chaos can happen this weekend and make all these hypothetical scenarios a lot easier next week. We have about 5 to 10 minutes for the Q&A, guys. This first one comes from Tyler Whitfield, and he just says, "This Thursday is my birthday. Can I get a happy birthday?"
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, man.
Happy-
My mic sounds
I
low.
turned you down a little
And
bit.
now
Oh,
it's
yeah.
the part where Lyle and Brady serenade. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Oh, sorry.
That sounded like the back home again.
Back home again.
This comes from Depressed Blazer Fan. Now, let's say both Minnesota and Baylor go undefeated, but only one of them can crack the playoff. Who would you guys give the edge to?
Minnesota, because that would mean that they beat Penn State, Ohio State, probably Wisconsin,
And Iowa, say.
and Iowa.
What was that question one more time?
If Minnesota and Baylor both go undefeated, who gets the final playoff spot?
Minnesota.
Yeah, I have to go with Minnesota as well. But hey, give us some crazy scenarios that could happen for that. P-Town Send. Nice. Out of all the coaches in college football, which one could make Rutgers a championship contender?
Les
Now, this
Miles.
is-
He's
now
doing
thi-
it
yeah.
with Kansas.
Now, it could be current coaches, coaches that aren't currently hired.
Nick Saban.
Urban Meyer.
Yeah. Nick Saban.
Yeah, I think Nick Saban as well. But hey, it'd be kind of fun to see Urban Meyer come out of retirement and go to Rutgers, see what he does.
That would not be fun.
Now, this is a hot take from Jacob Davis, but yes, Brady.
Before we get to that, I figured out why the former chief of staff for the Army is on the college football playoff committee.
And why is it
Why?
Brady?
Because he was awarded the National Football Foundation Distinguished American Award, which is the highest honor the National Football Foundation, which is the governing body for the college
Can
football
you
Hall of
say that
Fame.
one more time?
The National Football Foundation Distinguished American Award, that one?
The
Cherubundi Tart Cherry Booker Raton Bowl?
The NFFDS, of course.
National Football Foundation. So it's the highest award offered by the National Football Foundation.
Yay.
Yeah, so that's why.
Oh, there you go. This comes from Jacob Davis, and he has a hot take for us, not a question. He said, Alabama will lose to Western Carolina on a fake punt that goes for a touchdown. As time expires, you heard it here first.
Nope.
It's a hot take, Jacob Davis.
Let me get that.
Let me get that.
Let me
The
get
final
that.
one comes from the Gator King. Guys, which team are the only real Tigers? Who are the legit Tigers? Who are the Tigers when you think of Tigers?
First,
Thank you. We love you, man. Go Tigers.
first team, and this is not at the. It depends on who is more relevant for me. And at the moment, it's LSU. So as soon as he said Tigers, I thought of LSU. And I mean, for the most part, for me, I always think of LSU just because I don't know. I really don't have a reason why. But maybe, for example, in 2013 and 2010, if you were to say Tigers, maybe I would think Auburn.
I've always kind of thought LSU when I hear Tigers, just like Josh. So the first name that comes to head when I grew up watching college football, they were probably the most relevant team. As good as Clemson is, they've been really, really good over the last 5-6 years or so. But LSU's been pretty sustainably good for a while now.
Mm-hmm.
I agreed. LSU, baby. Because thank you, man.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
Yeah,
Love it, man. Go Tigers.
Nowadays, I do think Clemson, that's the first one I go to, but overall, I do think LSU. And if you're listening to the show right now, hit us up on Twitter at the EHH Show _ and let us know who you guys think of when you hear Tigers. That's a good question. He also jotted down the Memphis Tigers.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and the Auburn Tigers.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. I mean, let's just see. As a matter of fact, Josh, why don't you take over for about 30 seconds? I'm going to look up every Tigers there are in college football.
All right, cool, guys. So we're going to talk about how good my fantasy team is. I'm just kidding. So here's what we should talk about. Which team that is currently not ranked in the top 10, this is a hypothetical for you, team that is not currently ranked in the top 10, that is going to be ranked in the top 10 1 year from today. One team. Who would it be? You don't have to do any research at all. Just literally say a name. Except IU. Brady, do not. If you say Indiana, I will come in there and smack you.
Promise?
Oh, wow. All right, then. Ooh, Lyle's thinking.
Riveting radio.
For
right?
me.
If it was Phil
What was the question?
Jurkovec, I might say
I was
Notre
going to
Dame.
say. I was going to say maybe Notre Dame.
Hello? What
Hello?
was the question?
If there is a team, it's kind of a dumb question, but if there is a team that's not currently ranked in the top 10 right now that is going to be ranked in the top 10 1 year from today, who is it?
Hold on, let me just get those rankings up. What was everyone's picks?
I said if it's Phil Jurkovec under center, I'll say Notre Dame.
Brady?
I wanted to say an Urban Meyer led USC,
Oh, go ahead.
but I'm not going to.
Oh.
Nah.
And I'm not going to say a Tom Allen led Indiana Hoosiers.
Oh.
I'm going to say a redemption Harbaugh led Michigan team.
I like it.
You took mine.
I like it.
yes, I
You
went-
took mine.
Yeah.
Same as
Although it's close, since no one else has said, I'm going to go with Florida.
Florida?
I'm going to go with Florida.
I am going to go with an undefeated Central Michigan Chippewas team.
Yes, I love
Because
it.
why, Josh?
Because they're really good.
Do they get?
Hey, maybe
do they get Thomas Rawls and Antonio
Hey,
Brown back?
Maybe
Yes.
at this rate, if North Dakota State keeps getting AP poll votes, they'll be in the top 10.
Yeah.
We'll have to wait and see. If Florida just can get like a legit quarterback, they're going to be so good.
Did you?
It's just-
Kyle Trask is pretty solid.
I'm talking like Heisman contending quarterback.
You mean like Tim Tebow?
Yes. That would be
Well,
ideal.
let's
All right,
make-
guys. There are 23 schools colleges, I should say, that have Tigers in their name.
What are they all D1 for
No.
football?
Oh, no.
How many in football?
Oh, I'm just going to go over a few of them. We got Tennessee State, Idaho State, Towson, Texas Southern, Trinity University, St. Philip's, Texas Southern, University of the Pacific, one in our own backyard,
University
Josh.
of the Pacific, yep.
University of the Pacific, Colorado College, the Rochester Institute of Technology Tigers. I don't know how we
RIT,
didn't think of that
they're in
one.
hockey.
I don't know how we didn't think of that one.
They play ASU in a couple weeks.
Now, is this Trine University or Trini? Well,
Trine.
it's Trine.
It's Trine.
We, of course, got East Texas Baptist University. I don't know how we forgot that one. We got Missouri. We forgot about the Missouri Tigers. DePaul University. Not DePaul.
DePaul,
With
it's
a
in
W.
Indiana.
DePaul. Fort Hays State University.
The home of. Never mind.
Hiwassee College. Hampton Sydney College. That one I thought Lyle would have for sure had. And, of course, last but not least, Princeton. So those are all your Tigers in college.
Cool.
There you go. Thanks, Quora.com.
Love it.
All right, but it's time to get to our pick'ems now. So, Brady, roll that music up for us because I love that song. Someone commented this past week about the song. I'm trying to think of what it was. Oh, they said, it sounds like I'm at Disneyland.
Yeah.
It kind of does sound like I'm at Disneyland. It sounds like I'm on Main Street.
It kind of does.
Maybe make it a little louder this week, Brady. I want the full. There we go. Yes. All right, so we're going to go to our ESPN Pick'ems League first. And currently in first place with 81 points is 2019-2020 CFB, also known as Blake Walker. Well done, Blake. Well done. I'm in 65th place in that league. What
Congrats.
place are you guys in?
I don't know. I have not made my picks in probably a month.
NA.
That is what you hate to see. Moving on now to our Pick'em rankings. In fourth place with 82 points is Lyle.
Wow.
In third place with 87 points
Wow.
is I.
Wow.
My goodness!
Yeah. In second place with 93 points is Brady. No, I'm kidding. It's not Brady. It is Josh with 93 points.
will kill you.
I fooled you there. But Josh has closed in on Brady, though. Do you remember what it was last week by chance?
I don't.
But it was definitely not as close as this because Brady's in first, but with 96 points. So Josh
3-point
is-
lead.
What is it?
3-point
Oh,
lead.
yes.
Coming for you.
right.
So
cool.
a 3-point lead for Brady.
enough.
So Brady, it's time for you to quit messing around. You got kind of cute there with your picks. It's time to go back to being legit and capture your first ever Pick'ems title.
Good luck.
Do I throw it away this week?
Yep.
We'll have to wait and see. I think we got about 12 games lined up. We have 12 minutes to do it, so perfect timing. Well done. Well done. Starting with the first game, we got Louisiana Tech at Marshall.
You know what? I think you guys are going to notice a trend in this pick.
Oh?
You know what? That's just not true. Never mind. I'm taking Louisiana Tech on the road this week. I think they're the better team. I think they'll get the win.
I do too. I got Louisiana Tech.
Marshall at home. Yep.
I love it. I think a few weeks ago I went against Marshall like 2 weeks in a row. I'm not going to do that this week, and I'm going to go with the Thunderin' Herd. Indiana at Penn State.
We'll see if Penn State can bounce back, Brady. I think Indiana's a good team. So you know what? This week I'm taking IU to lose on the road to Penn State.
You got the hand signal, right?
You know,
Oh, yeah.
but before Brady even goes, I know last week on game day, the guest picker picked Minnesota, and Lee Corso goes, well, that's a lousy pick, and then Minnesota ended up winning. So, Brady, if you pick Indiana, I will not say that's a lousy pick. However, I'm going with Penn State.
You know, Lee Corso was a great coach for the IU football program. And Tom Allen currently is a great coach for the IU football program. But you know who's a slightly better coach? That's James Franklin. I'm going Penn State, and it hurts my heart to say it.
That's a lousy pick.
Yeah, I have.
He yeah.
I had Indiana highlighted in my notes too.
He didn't Corso didn't even say not so fast. He just goes, that's a lousy
That's
pick.
a lousy pick.
Yeah. I miss when he used to do with all energy. Now he just goes, not so fast. I like when he would just go ham.
When he was younger?
That's also true. I'm going to take Indiana.
Blake still needs to catch up.
Plus 15. Penn State gets the win. But Indiana keeps it within 15.
I'll take it.
I'm looking at these
24th
games,
ranked,
guys.
by the way, a cheers to the Hoosiers, breaking the longest drought of any Power 5 team not being ranked. It's been 25 years.
Is it really?
Yes.
That's
longest
incredible.
Power 5.
So never in your lifetime have they been in the top 25.
Never.
That's
We're a
remarkable.
basketball school.
Now, here's something I want to bring up. It's not one of the pick'ems. Northwestern. Actually, wait. This is our
Come
worst
to
of
it
the worst.
later.
Never
Yep,
mind.
It is. I have that noted.
Never
I have that
mind.
noted also, Blake.
Never mind. TCU at Texas Tech.
Tech at home.
I got TCU on the road.
Jerry World Jr.
Tech at home.
I'm gonna go with TCU in this one. Now, this one I believe I had switched.
You
It
did.
is Tulane at Temple.
You know what? I'm sticking with the main man, Baseball Brit, and I'm taking the Green Wave on the road.
I got Temple. I like Temple.
I got Tulane on the road.
I got Tulane as well. I mean, anytime your team is a wave, how can you not pick them?
Yeah.
Navy
or a
at
storm.
Notre Dame.
Navy
say Storm?
is not going to win. I'm taking Notre Dame at home.
Yeah, they usually play Notre Dame close with that triple option, but I'm going to take Notre Dame. Or with the option, I should say.
I thought they got rid of it. Oh, was that Georgia Tech?
Yeah.
Yeah, Navy still runs it.
Notre Dame.
Guys, Navy, I mean, what were they ranked in the playoff rankings?
22,
They came in
21.
at 22. The spread of this game was currently Notre Dame with the 8. I'm going Navy in the upset. That triple
23.
Option,
They're
That triple
23.
option could be tough for some teams. Maybe it'll happen this week. I'm going to go with Navy in this one with the upset. Wake Forest at Clemson. Now, we did say earlier in the year that this would probably be Clemson's. Oh, is this what your notes were, Josh?
No, I'm just shaking my head. No, Clemson's going to win.
We said earlier in the year that this would probably be Clemson's probably toughest ACC game. Yeah, they're 34.5-point favorites.
Yeah.
Sorry, Captain Rob.
Sorry, Captain Rob. Clemson.
Again, outside of UNC and Texas A&M, Clemson's won all their games by 29 or more points. Man, what a bad offense. What a bad defense. I'm taking Clemson.
The battle of our show's two biggest fans, Captain Rob and Coster, and I'm going with Coster in Clemson.
Hopefully, Coster doesn't break his jaw on this one, but I'm going to go with the Tigers in this game. This one's kind of long. I'm going to save this more for the end. Texas at Iowa State.
Texas is not back, but I just don't know if Brock Purdy and the Cyclones will get it done this week. I think they should have kicked the field goal because I think in the Big 12, all of the offenses are good enough to compete with each other, and I think they should have gone to overtime, and I don't think that Brock Purdy gets the win at home this week for Iowa State. I've got UT.
Yeah, I got Texas on the road.
Iowa State at home because, Lyle, it's a Cyclone.
They absolutely should have gone for 2. It was a smart move. You're on the road. You're playing with house money. You go for the win. You don't go overtime.
No money.
You don't go for overtime. I'm going to go with Iowa State at home.
That's funny, Josh.
Here we go, boys. Now is when things get juicy. This is a scrumptious set of games we got coming up. Minnesota at Iowa.
You know what? I'm going to save the theatrics on this one. I'm taking the Golden Gophers on the road.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm taking Minnesota too. They burned me last week, and either I'm right or they go down. So, Minnesota. I actually do think Minnesota's going to win, though. I'm not like Blake where I make picks. Where I think the other team's going to win, but I'm going to pick this team to win. I actually think Minnesota's going to win.
Uh-huh.
Minnesota on the road because why, Lyle?
Because why not?
Why not?
Josh, your mic's off for the next round because why not?
I'm very tempted to take the Hawkeyes in this one. I'm very tempted.
That would be sad.
Hypocrite.
But I'm going to ride this out with my Minnesota Gophers. I'm going to be rowing the boat with you guys. Go Gophers.
Dude, you got more teams than that old guy that used to be on the show.
Oh, that is true. Oklahoma at Baylor.
I think this is going to be a really good game. I think it's going to be a shootout, too, so I'm taking Oklahoma on the road.
I like Oklahoma, too. Baylor's a good team, just maybe not quite up to the level of Oklahoma.
Oklahoma piecing the pieces together to form a big piece to win. Oklahoma.
Wonderful. Oklahoma, 10-point favorites in this one over Baylor. I honestly don't know.
We're not picking the line. We're
I
picking
know.
the
I just
outright
like going
winner.
over this. I'm going to go with the Sooners in this one, which does bring us to our worst of the
You
worst.
skipped
now.
a game. You should go back to the other one.
That's right, because I had it down and then I moved it.
Yep.
Georgia at Auburn.
We talked about who are the Tigers earlier, and for me, it's not Auburn, and in this game, it's also not Auburn. So I've got Georgia on the road.
Yeah, I like Georgia, too. Outside of the one loss, they've been really solid this year. I got the Bulldogs.
Dogs on the road.
He's taking Auburn.
I'm taking Georgia.
A Georgia win
wanna
looks
take Auburn.
better
It's
for Oregon.
It's going to be a close game. I think this is going to be a close game. I can't believe I'm saying this. I think this might be Bo Nix's best game of the year. I just have a hunch. I just have a weird feeling that Bo Nix is going to go for 210 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Have you watched what he's done against other ranked teams?
That's why I'm saying, I'm just going out on a limb saying
Oregon.
I have a thought that this could be his best game. Speaking of best games, this might be the greatest, worst of the worst game we've ever gotten,
We say
guys.
that literally every
No,
week.
I think this one is.
This is a whole nother level of bad. So it's going to be featuring UMass and Northwestern, both who only have one win. I'm sure Brady already knows what this is.
Yes, sir.
Would you guys like to take a guess as to how much Northwestern is favored over UMass? Now, again, granted, both teams have one win.
Both teams
they're-
are 1-8.
So they're some of the worst teams in college football. Just guess how much Northwestern is favored by.
I am going to go out on a limb and say that it's anywhere between 39 points and 40.5 points, depending on which of the 3 major betting sites you're looking at.
I'm going to say like 20.
Josh
well,
knows.
Josh is no fun because, well, you should have been able to hint at the fact that
It's
Josh
been pulled
knows.
up on my computer since the second we started the show.
Northwestern is favored by 40 points.
Northwestern hasn't scored 40 points in a game all year long.
I don't
And
think-
the over-under's 56.5.
I don't think they've scored 30 points in a game this season. But now, you're probably thinking, why would you take Northwestern? I saw this crazy stat on Twitter, or I think it was today or yesterday, guys. UMass has 1 win. Akron has no wins. UMass's only win is against Akron. If you take the game out of the equation, both UMass and Akron are 0-18 this year against the spread. Meaning, every game that they've played, whatever the spread was, the other team is covered. Tonight, Eastern Michigan was a 16-point favorite over Akron. Yeah, they won by like 40.
Northwestern has scored 30 points in one game, and it was their one win against UNLV, 30-14.
Oh, UNLV is really good, though.
All right, so guys, who's winning this game?
They're not. You know what? I really like those black Northwestern jerseys with the purple and gold highlights.
The Harry Potter jerseys.
And I like purple and gold, so I'm taking the Wildcats.
Yeah, Brady.
Get you ahead in the game.
Brady mentioned Clemson Wake Forest being the battle between our 2 friends of the show, Andrew Coster, Captain Rob, another friend of the show, Peter Warren. I'm sure it's been a tough year out at
main
Northwestern this year, but you know what? 40-point favorites. Come on, Northwestern's going to get the win.
Northwestern by 41.
Yeah, Northwestern wins this game, guys. It seems impossible to cover. Yes, I know we have 2 minutes. The Arizona State one's not going to take long, but UMass is so bad. This team is so bad. I'm looking at the amount of points they've scored recently. 0, like 7. Like it's going to be bad. I think Northwestern wins. You know what? They're not going to cover, which brings us to the final game. Wow, I can't believe Oregon State actually has one less win than us, but they do. Arizona State at Oregon State, the last road game of the year for our Sun Devils.
Reser Stadium, the place where teams that I follow go to die. Every year.
Well, just 07.
Well, no, SC did it twice. ASU did it in 2014 when they were literally a top 10 team and a win away from going to the playoff, probably. And then they went up to Reser Stadium and lost. It's not going to happen this year. I'm taking the Devils on the road. I think ASU wins by 10.
Reser Stadium, the future home of former ASU kicker Brandon Reese, maybe? Is ASU
Former
gonna-
USC quarterback Jack
Is
Sears.
ASU going to get a win?
God.
Is ASU going to get a win at Oregon State? Maybe. Yeah, they will. ASU.
Sun Devils on the road by 2 scores.
Guys, I can't believe I'm doing this.
Oh, chill.
It's a 3. ASU's 3-point favorites. Oregon State's look good. They still have a chance to represent themselves in the Pac-12 title game. I'm gonna go with the Beavers.
Question mark?
What noise does a beaver make? I don't know about that, but that does wrap up this edition of the Harris Highlight Show. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at the HHShow_. There's the music. Make sure to listen live every week at 9 p.m. Eastern on BlazeRadioOnline.com. Lots of great culture ball content. Be interactive with us on Twitter. Lots of great stuff coming your way. We'll see you guys soon. For Josh Schaefer, Lyle Goldstein, Brady Klein, and our intern in the other studio, this has been Blake Harris from the Bill Austin Radio Studio at the Walter Cronkite School that hurt my elbow of journalism in beautiful downtown Phoenix. And, yeah, we will see you guys next week.